Levels of Leadership podcast. Carry Your Cross, episode 6, technically. Sitting here with Dr. Brian Opp. The Opp family has been close friends from us long before we even opened a gym. I believe the first time I ever met you and your wife was the Dirty Dozen Tough Mudder.
Yep.
Right?
That's the one we ran it
Yeah,
first time.
which was Billy Israelson. He had his kettlebell gym, Ascension Fitness, up on Viking Boulevard, and we have met through my neighbor Justin, and I remember meeting you guys, and you guys were hardcore into it, and for some reason our circle just kind of stayed, kind of connected, and once we opened the gym, we really, we really connected, and I can honestly say to you guys and to Brian that Brian is the most knowledgeable human being I know in person on what I would consider to be true human health. He's someone I trust more than anybody. We consider you our primary care physician. What I really love is having someone that understands where true health and wellness comes from. Not that you can't have a surgery, not that you can't have a pharmaceutical, not that you can't have some of these elements of sick care, but you understand how to hold people accountable to the things that will truly induce health. And then you have such an incredible knowledge of the holistic elements of how those things work together, whether they're mind, body, placebic, psychological, spiritual, hormonal, everything, bacterial, right? I mean, across the board. And so I've always been an admirer of your commitment to ongoing education and updating your knowledge and your humility in that. And if I have a go-to, I consider it a true blessing that I can text you in the middle of the day and say, hey, what do you recommend for this? And just, so I'm glad you're here, and I'm happy to have you here. And he's the owner of Opp Family Chiropractic up in St. Francis, Minnesota. Your wife is also a practicing, she's a chiropractor. She's more on the business side of it and less on the practicing side of it. But welcome.
Well, thank you. Well, that's great. All those great introduction. You don't often get to hear those words, in your own practice and things like that when you're doing the day to day. But definitely excited to do this podcast and to be with you. And I love always talking with you because we have, obviously similar ideas. So it's easy, conversations flow, and we're always trying to get people better as much as we possibly can.
Right.
And people are not getting better. That's the hard part. And so
it does feel like ice skating uphill type scenario.
But
we understand why. But you can't not try. Right?
There's no not giving. Giving up is not an option. So like they say, if you save one person, that one person could save another person, and then we just go on down the line.
That's right.
And like you said, this is I don't claim to be the end all be all. I just am very curious on many different things, and if you stay curious, you'll never be bored a day in your life. So
awesome.
But so we're going to tackle low testosterone levels in males. It's a huge issue that we have that I see on a daily basis. As soon as the guy walks in, you can tell, he's got the beer belly, it's hanging over his jeans, he's sluggish, he's already talking about low energy, things like that. So really, they call it the disappearing male. So the available workforce for the 18 to 54-year-old post World War II has gone down 50%. So that's why you can't find anybody to work. So the trades are all dying out. So there's less and less people doing that. There's more people sitting at a desk. So we have more IT people doing those things, and just people not working in general. So it becomes a really big issue. And it's not just affecting men. You have females then too that are having issues with low testosterone and things, how that affects estrogen levels and fertility and all sorts of different things, and birth control. And that's a whole nother talk that we'll get into. But essentially, you need testosterone to feel like a man, right? There are levels that are normal. I think the range is way too large. So somebody has a low 200 in the total testosterone, they're still in the range, but they're not going to feel good. They're not going to have the energy. They're not going to want to come and work out on a daily basis, or even 3 times a week, whatever it is. It's hard to get up there medicating themselves with something to be able to do that. And that's just a slippery slope, especially as you get into, mid 40s. Now we have heart disease, diabetes, you're going to be on medications. And so, yeah, you're going to shorten your life essentially. So, so some of the functions of testosterone we talked about, male sex characteristics, building muscle, having energy, having the motivation. I love the one, basically on Huberman's podcast, he said it makes the hard things feel easy, or easier. Mm-hmm. So you can go to that next workout and do that. So that's why, as you age naturally,
obviously,
it gets harder to feel like you're 20. But so we'll talk some ways through this how to recapture some of that, and we can even get into some of the hormone replacement therapies, benefits. We can talk about peptides and their benefits and risks and things like that. So we can go. Cool. It's not something that I typically talk about, but if that's the way it takes us, we go into it. We'll talk about it. So
that's awesome. All
right. So some of the most common things that we'll see in the patient that comes in to see us with low testosterone, they're going to be depressed. And that's different from anxiety. So I separate the two when I ask a patient, do you have anxiousness or depression? And people will be labeled with both. So I always ask them, are you don't want to get out of mom's basement, don't want to get out of bed because that's depression, or can you not get out of your own head? That's anxiety.
Yeah.
So
or you're afraid to get out of your mom's basement.
Yes.
Would be another
100%.
Twisted.
Yeah. And you can lump, addictions into this and things like that they're trying to do. Obviously loss of muscle tone, blood sugar issues, you're going to have higher cholesterol levels. Those are all the things that are going to be big, huge issues there. Fatigue, that's always one of the number one things. They're usually going to be higher stress because they can't handle stress of life, things like that. Okay. So then you start looking into reasons why. So when we have a patient or we have a person in front of us, usually we're going to be looking at, what are they eating? Okay. Typically standard American diet. That's pretty much what, we're high carbohydrates, processed foods, very low proteins. Yep. They're stopping. If it's a dad, around my age, 45, 46, the kids are older, you're running from thing to thing to thing. So what do? You stop at this fast food joint, that fast food joint. You're getting less and less sleep with less and less activity, and the snowballs. And if you have a job that really doesn't require you to do much on a daily basis, you're gonna be a slippery. Yep. So fast. You get, you say you take, often I hear is someone will put on 15 pounds during the winter because they're less active, and then they take off 10 of it. Well, you just gained 5 pounds, and over 20 years, you are looking at a big issue. Yeah. So then you go into the doctor, and they start to want to prescribe you. They do some blood work, and they prescribe you medications to not make you feel better, just to keep you alive and kicking just a few more days at that point in time. So the big issue we see then is those foods, that insulin issue. The environment that we live in isn't exactly the cleanest environment. So then we have an issue with estrogen factors. So estrogen dominance is a term that people throw around. So the impact on the testosterone from environmental factors and diet increases the estrogen factors in our body, and you can measure it, and that will then create a lower testosterone issue. What also happens is there's an enzyme in your body called aromatase that will turn your testosterone, if you continue to eat and be that way, into estrogen as well. So now you get a double whammy. Wow. So you could go on to testosterone replacement therapy.
Almost like an autoimmune disease for testosterone.
Yes.
Crazy.
And you can go on to testosterone replacement therapy.
Yeah.
And all it's doing is just shunting more of that into estrogen.
Wow.
So you just upregulate that aromatase, and that's they will use aromatase inhibitors for breast cancers. Okay. So and they will actually, some people on testosterone replacement therapy will also be placed on estrogen and aromatase inhibitor as well to make sure that doesn't go in the wrong spot. Okay, but nobody ever tells those guys, hey, if you're going to go on that, you should probably also work out and drop some weight and do these things. This is not a magic potion by itself.
Yeah.
Will you feel better? Yes, which is great, because sometimes to feel better is makes it easier then to go into the gym and you feel better there. So I've changed my tune if people are motivated enough, but if they're just going to take the testosterone replacement therapy and not do anything else, then it's only going to work for so long, and then you're going to be back to where you were before. Okay.
Yep.
So we talk about estrogen dominance, and the causes are, stress. 75 to 90% of all office visits that walk into a doctor's office is going to be due to stress. So whether you're depressed, you're anxious, your job sucks, your relationships. We can go a whole thing on relationships.
We can go right down into mindset training, spiritual training,
100%,
all the psychology aspects of it. But the underlying root is,
yeah.
So it all manifests itself in the disconnect between ultimately what we want versus what is, and how we go or don't go with that.
Yeah.
And
lack of purpose is a huge issue with people, and if you don't have purpose, it really makes life not very fun.
Yes.
So toxins, so we talked about that. So environmental factors, from plastics to pesticides, to personal hygiene products, all that stuff. So we talk to patients often about cleaning up your environment. That's another step that we have them do. So it's not just, doc, can I just take this supplement or do this, do that? Like, no, there's multiple factors in this, and they're not getting any of those discussions done and guides and being able to do that. So finding people who will do that for you and have a team to be able to do that will be great for your overall health. Medications, so some of the most common ones, asthma inhalers. So all those kids like, oh, I have an exercise-induced asthma. I'm like, well, have you been tested
like
for?
The most overprescribed thing.
Yes.
Drives me nuts.
Yep. Yeah. You'd have that one kid. When I was growing up, one kid on your team, whatever, would have an inhaler, but everybody else would be fine. And now it's like, you have a baggie full of inhalers around here, and you have to have, prior training to do all these things now to be.
You have exercise induced anxiety.
Yes.
Right. And you don't know how to breathe hard.
Yep.
And you don't know how to let that actually wash over you and calm yourself down and regain your composure.
Yes.
I was a symptom of that.
Oh,
so,
yeah.
I mean, I had.
Yeah, I remember that.
I had the inhaler. I had everything.
Yep.
And it was like, I'm running cross country.
Well,
like, how do I need an inhaler?
Yes.
I'm running miles and miles and miles. Like, this seems so ridiculous.
Yeah. The whole aspect of, we could talk about evidence-based medicine and where that's taking us, but antidepressants, another huge one, depletes, creates estrogen dominance for that. We could talk about the brain on that one too. Antihistamines, they both do the same thing. Cholesterol lowering drugs, you need cholesterol for your hormones. So if you take cholesterol lowering drugs, it's really hard to make hormones. Acid reflux medications, one of the first things that I try to get patients off, because you can't digest your food, you can't break down protein, you can't have amino acids build muscle, build dopamine, which gives you motivation, all these things. So
would you root core that to a gut
Oh yeah.
ultimate issue.
Yeah.
Whether that's dietary or environmental, all the things.
Yep.
But rebuilding the gut health. I mean, there's obviously a reason why we have acid reflux and we're, you know.
Yeah, if you're stressed out, you know, you eat like crap.
Drinking like crazy.
Yep. All those things. It creates inflammation in your stomach. Decreases your stomach acid, which doesn't allow the valve over your stomach between that and your esophagus to be able to close, and then you get that constant kind of burning sensation there. So it's actually, there's a great book called Why Stomach Acid is Good for You. It's written by a medical doctor, Dr. Wright. He goes through all this. It's actually an issue with low stomach acid, not high stomach acid. Yeah. So then we rebuild patients' stomach acid. That's always step one when someone comes in with a whole host of things. I always check that first, because if you can't digest your food, I don't care if I tell you to change your diet. If you can't digest it, it's not going to matter. You're going to feel like crud anyways when you start trying to even eat the good foods at that point in time. So we do that. So those are the big things. The gut dysbiosis, so the gut infections, the gut, the digestive issues, gallbladder dysfunction, can't break down fats because you need the cholesterol, and then infections just in the gut in general, very common. You do not need a fever to have an infection. You can have a fungal or yeast infection. Candida's huge,
so
obviously.
Important to know.
Yeah.
Most of those people are walking infections.
Oh yeah,
right.
Yep. Well,
I mean,
you're essentially. We're more bugs than we are anything else.
Right.
So yes, and it doesn't take much to get a imbalance of the gut in the first place.
Right.
Very small percentage when you overgrow, and you can overgrow good bacteria, you can overgrow bad bacteria. You know, we all have E. coli in us, so it just overgrows, and then now we have ourselves an E. coli infection. So, but yeah, so addressing those things is always very important for the overall health, because you need to be able to digest your food, to be able to have the raw materials to make your hormones. So just by doing that, people will feel better in general. They'll have more energy because all those nutrients that they're getting from the better foods, more dense, calorie dense foods, they'll feel better in general. So you don't need to go see anybody technically to do some of these things. But yeah, if you clean up the environment and do those things, you know, that's easy to do. So some of the things that we do in our office for like testing, there's a test we call the Dutch test. It tests testosterone, free and total, your estrogen levels, your progesterone levels. Yes, guys have a little bit of progesterone.
What's progesterone?
So progesterone is for females. It helps with pregnancy. It's very good for complexion, so wrinkles. So that's why when they say that guys age gracefully and women don't, when they get that drop in progesterone, that's when the wrinkles and things start to occur. But it's very brain protective as well. So we use progesterone on females, not typically males, unless they really absolutely need it and shows. But typically it's going to be a more female issue. But it tests cortisol levels. So when you wake up in the morning, when you're raring to go, testosterone, cortisol, all those like, let's get raring to go, work out in the morning, let's go. They should be getting you up and moving, not coffee, not monster drinks, Red Bull, whatever it is that you're doing. So those are the.
Huberman talks a lot about the delayed.
If
you want the benefits of coffee,
wait an hour and a half.
Wait a couple hours, and then
So if you can do that, that's great. And then you avoid the downturn in the later in the day. So that's a great point to that. Testing, that's called the Dutch test. If you're going to go to the doctor, getting your free and total testosterone, make sure they do the total, because that's what's free. So that's what's available to your body. The total is just kind of what you have all throughout your whole body. So that's why they call it total. Getting your DHEA level, so the DHEAS. So that's what gets turned into testosterone. So if that's low, you're not making enough raw materials. I really like a saliva cortisol test over a year, or not a urine test, but a blood test just in general, because that's a one-time test, where the saliva, typically you're doing it through the day, doing it multiple times, so you can see what is it when I'm waking up, what is it in the midday, and what is it at the end of the night, so that you can see how the natural flow should be.
Makes sense.
So there's some really good information you can get from that. Are you breaking down your hormones in the right way? And then, utilizing all that stuff, it's good to have that. And then, some general blood work that you would get. I'd get somebody a fasting insulin as well. What's your blood sugars? You could do, there's something called a glucose tolerance test. So it's a 2-hour test that they drink the sugary solution, and then they test it through there to see if you have a delayed response in your sugar spikes and things like that. So we do some things with that. But essentially what you want to do is you want to keep your blood sugar as even as you possibly can. So there's where your balanced diet comes into it. Eat your proteins and fats quicker, in the beginning, and then do your carbs at the end of the meal. Some things you can do during your meal. I'll often have patients take fish oil, so it's a fat, so they get an extra fat, and that can be very helpful in limiting sugar spikes, insulin spikes there. There's an herb called berberine. People talk about it often for like gut health, because it can help kill like bacterial and fungal and yeast infections in there. But it's also great it acts like metformin in the body. So it stops that sugar spike or that insulin spike again, so it levels you off, so you're not getting that thing. Now, if you have somebody who's, I have patients who I don't give it to because their blood sugar is low, so they're not eating enough, and so they're not eating often enough, I should say, and so they're getting that drop, and then they get the hypoglycemia issue, and that puts them in a stressful state, and that shunts everything to cortisol and starts stealing all the other hormones, and so then we have to talk with patients about that, about, hey, you need to not let your blood sugar drop, and you get all jittery and hangry, right? So that's the hangry people. The headachy people. They wake up in the middle of the night, and they're like, they're all anxious. Well, their blood sugar is telling them, get up and go eat because we think you're dying. So those are some things that I would normally do for patients just in general, if testing for hormones there. So those are the big things in office. So
What?
go ahead.
Yeah. What are the main thing? Maybe you're getting to this.
Yep.
Like for men, like what are, if you could like really narrow down, like what are the key elements they could do right now?
Yep.
Are you getting to
Yep.
okay,
That's
all
right.
right, all right.
So how are we going to improve all this stuff? Yeah.
Right.
So,
Yep.
so yeah, you want to. Okay, here's the issue.
Yep.
Everybody wants to get to like, what can we do, to improve it? Well, number one, sleep is always important there. So I always ask about sleep and stress. So do we need to do something with that? Why are they not sleeping? Are they anxious? Do we have to, do some things with dopamine issues? Because it's not a serotonin issue, it's a dopamine issue. So, or do we need to increase dopamine so that they have a better quality of sleep in general, because then they're sleeping too much and they can't get off the couch, things like that. So good sleep, because that's when your testosterone, your human growth hormone, is going to be highest, other than after a workout. Next, dietary stuff. So people will talk about anti-inflammatory. I try to make it as simple as possible. If you can just eat real food, if we start there, great, and just eat protein at every meal. So, if you want to weigh a certain amount of pounds, then you try to get to that certain amount of protein per day at that point in time. That's what we want to do. And that typically will keep people satiated. You're getting the building blocks. And this is all predicated on, am I digesting my food and being able to assimilate all that and digest and absorb it there. So
How do you feel about supplemental protein?
yeah, totally.
Okay.
So, I mean,
Because it can be a lot.
yeah, totally. I mean,
Right.
when you're looking at any of that food now that you're looking at,
Obviously, a protein shake doesn't
Mm-hmm.
supplement a good piece of venison.
no,
or
because you're getting
chicken.
other needs. Yeah, because
right.
But
Right.
as a supplemental along with the dietary thing to meet needs,
Yeah.
totally fine.
Okay.
Yep,
Okay.
I'm all on board for that. And when it's pre-digested, it's easier to get into the body, and if it's timed right too, you can time it around your workouts, so
Yep.
you're not feeling all like bloated,
Yep.
things like that. So that's a perfect example of where supplementation, so supplementing your diet, was something that's going to be beneficial for your
Yep.
overall well-being. So yeah, so getting those in there. So start with your proteins, real foods. Mix in some good fats as much as you can. So whether people want to say Mediterranean with olive oils or
Yep.
MCT oils with coconut
But
oil.
those denser calories to
Yep,
kind of
yeah. Because then you don't get the
get the balance.
yeah.
Yep.
When you think about
Nuts.
there's only two reasons to really eat in life, and that's for building blocks and for energy.
Yeah.
So you have two energy sources, fats and carbs,
Yeah.
and you have one building block, which is the protein. Protein can be, yes, used as a energy source, but it's a horrible energy
Yeah,
source. Okay.
Right.
So if you can break down fat, you get
And proteins ultimately are carbs, right?
Yeah, yep. Yes, you can-
eventually.
yes.
They're just a super inefficient form.
Yes,
right?
yes,
Okay,
yeah. So there's where the energy comes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So as you're trying to convert them, the conversion is very
Yes.
tough. So you could also say, well, as protein's trying to be converted into that energy, you have to use energy to do that. So there's where you can almost be a net zero at
Yeah.
that point in time.
Yeah.
So when people are like, well, you're going to get a sugar spike for this, I'm like, okay.
Right.
Okay, then it's
there's those.
yeah.
So
So with
that venison from
yes,
7 hours ago.
yes, yeah. So then
You're pretty dialed in if you
Yeah.
can feel that one.
So when we start getting into these little nuanced things,
Yeah.
I'm like,
All right. Calm down.
90% of the population just needs to eat some real food,
right.
And as much real food as you possibly
Yeah.
can. So there's that.
Veggies, fruits.
Yeah, totally. You always want to eat, fill up your plate with God's foods.
Micronutrients.
Yeah, because you need magnesium and zinc and all those things.
Your
So,
vitamins.
yeah, so there's that.
Okay.
Intermittent fasting. If you're lean, intermittent fasting might not be the thing for you, because you probably need to eat enough calories. Yes. So yeah, if you have a higher overall metabolism because you're low body fat and things like that, high muscle mass, you're going to want to eat to save that muscle mass, not because your body's going to start eating your muscle mass to be able to survive. So intermittent fasting for the certain population. We can talk with females. That's an iffier thing.
Nobody feels bad for that population.
Yes.
By the way.
No. So, yeah,
Okay.
high intensity exercise mixed in a little bit of that. So whether you're doing your HIIT stuff, you're doing sprinting, whatever it is, and then you're lifting your weights, getting your movements in, compound exercises. This is what everybody has been saying for years. You can supplement with amino acids on top of that if we're doing protein shakes. leucine has the most amount of studies behind it. So they almost all come with valine, leucine. Those are the big ones for that. Optimize your vitamin D levels. We talked about zinc and magnesium.
Huge.
Yeah. So those are all, we live in Minnesota, and I've had patients who've lived in, sunny destinations, and they come up and they have low vitamin Ds because when it's hot, they stay inside.
Yeah.
It's too hot for them. So
Yeah.
people in Arizona, when it's 110 in the summer, they're not going outside very long, right? So they're staying inside in air conditioning, trying to survive the heat.
Yeah.
So there's where that comes into it. And then reducing estrogen loads from, what hair and skincare products are you using? What underarm deodorant are you using? If you possibly can eat organic, if you can buy from a local farmer who does grass-fed stuff, free-range things.
Wild game.
Yep, as much as you possibly can. That's great. So those are some things to clean up your environment, to the detergents you use and stuff like that. And we can get into, clothing that you wear eventually if you really want to go to the, the extreme and things like that, because that can be all those things.
Yeah, we don't want to necessarily create, a phobia or a psychosis based around that.
No.
Because,
Yes.
it's like there's so much.
There is.
And then you get hit by a bus anyway.
Yeah,
You know
right.
what I mean?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, and you want to make it needs to be doable for a vast majority of the people.
Yes.
So if it's just like, I just want you to eat more protein every meal, you just, if you had that chicken breast, can you have another half of one and just do that? Can you have another half or this, another couple shrimp, or another couple this, or another piece of, half a piece of salmon, whatever you're going after, right?
Yeah.
If we can just start there, then people start to feel better just in general, and we'll work on the rest of it as they go. When you make little wins, then their mindset changes, and it makes it easier for them to move the dial a little bit easier, a little more, and their becomes a habit. So I never approach it like, I need to take sugar away, I need to take this away. I'm just like, I just want to add to your diet these things so that then
What's
you will feel
the
full.
most important thing we need to add?
Yes.
What's the most important thing we need to take away or minimize?
Yep.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
And just show me you can do that.
correct.
Right.
And if you can stay fuller longer, you are going to intermittent fast anyways, because your body is like,
you're gonna.
yep,
Yep.
you're not lighting the fuse and cutting through whatever carb you just ate, some processed food, and now you're like, okay, I don't feel like I really need to eat again for a little bit. Like, yep, because you ate enough nutrient-dense food where you are doing that.
Yeah.
And you could get into like, don't eat when you're bored, when you're sitting around, go for a walk, I don't know, do something. Read a book, you're just bored.
Now you're starting to get into the emotional management, right? And I think we spend a lot of time on that, right?
Yeah.
Is like actually working on, that heightened awareness and consciousness. We start getting more into meditation, so you can be aware of it, and you can recognize those triggering emotions and the thoughts that are creating the boredom or the restlessness or the influx of the have to, should-haves, would-haves, could-haves, all that's creating that anxiety response. Or even take your exercise and utilize that as an anti-anxiety response.
100%.
Right? And, we can, you don't have to go into that either, but, but you can use it, and
because if you don't control stress, and I don't even want to say control stress, because people, the whole big thing was like stress management, everything needed to manage their stress. It's like, well, so maybe the people were becoming less stress resilient rather than the opposite, where like the stress was increasing. Maybe our perception of stress was getting higher and higher and higher.
I think it's more existential, not to get into a philosophy conversation, but I think that's what we're experiencing, right? I mean, the stress of 100 years ago required action. The stress of today doesn't require action.
Yeah.
Right? And so there's no actual response to it, which is why exercise can trick your biology, right? It can trick your brain chemistry into thinking that you took action.
Yes.
Especially if it's high intensity, you're running from something. These are deeply evolutionarily, rooted, but, I think now it's just, we're so inundated all the time with fears, whether it's political, environmental, social, educational, just constantly inundated with these surrounding possible threats
Yeah.
that our perception is just overloaded at all times. So now you have to get into technology detox.
Yep.
You have to get into the behaviorals
Yep.
of like being present in your life.
Yep.
You know, having that good spiritual relationship with your interaction with the world around you in a way that actually, you know, puts
Yeah.
you in the world and not in this virtual sphere of,
Yes.
you know, fear and
Yep.
yeah. So
Yeah, like you hit it on the head there with the stress response was there to run from something, stand
Yeah.
and fight.
protect your baby.
Yep.
Right.
So it was all those types of things, but it was a physical act.
Yes.
It was not, I'm sitting in my car in traffic thinking about my crummy job or my crummy life,
Yeah.
and
About the soccer
Yes.
league my daughter didn't make.
Right,
and, you know,
exactly, yes.
About the lack of Facebook likes that I
Yes.
didn't get on my
Yes.
last post.
Why didn't
you know,
anybody
yeah.
comment on my Snapchat or my
Yeah.
Instagram reel or
And
whatever
it's
it was?
not that one thing.
Yes.
You know, I equate it, especially women tend to be more susceptible to this.
Yeah.
But not necessarily, but it is, you know, the way their minds work. I equate it to a computer with, you know, a desktop. I will always ask them, I'm like, if I were to have you bring in your laptop right now, how many windows do you have open?
Oh yeah.
Right?
Yep.
Like, this is, I want to see
Yeah.
the reflection of how your mind
Yep.
is working. And why do you have 20 windows open?
Yeah.
What are you doing with those 20
Yeah.
windows? What are they serving?
Yep.
You know, oh, you're just like, I got to buy shoes. I have to do this.
Yeah.
I have to do this. You're not actually doing anything.
No.
You're just bouncing.
Yep.
You're just clicking. You're not, yeah.
Yeah, you could
Yeah.
say, you know, that's the dopamine hit, right? They're just like move on to the next thing,
Yep.
move on to the next thing, move on to the
And
next
the
thing.
illusion of control.
Yep.
Right? That illusion of like,
Yeah.
I'm in control
Yes.
here. It's like, of what? You know, exactly what are you in control of when you're jumping from ring to ring to ring to ring, chasing your own tail, not doing anything, slowly developing to a ball of existential anxiety?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. So some
So-
things like, you know, because we have to deal with stress so much in the office, I like theanine. It's a green tea derivative. We call it a stress reset. So it comes in a little dropper, and they'll take it every hour they're awake for the next 7 days. It doesn't make them sleepy. It actually can help reduce the dopamine, so it centers them, and so chills them out, and they can think.
Resets.
Yep. So we do that. If they're on the other end, we're trying to get them out of the basement because they're depressed and not lack of motivation. So we'll use amino acids like tyrosine because that makes dopamine.
I just texted
Yep.
you about that.
Yep.
Yep.
So because that falls in ADD and ADHD, falls into the low dopamine issue. So that's why the boys especially, have to get up and move around and use their hands, and they don't get enough food in the day, or they're eating sugar in the morning and that burns through, and then they're like, okay, now I need to move because my dopamine level's low, and so.
Yep.
So there's the issue there, and Adderall is a great dopamine enhancer, so that's why it's so effective,
Yeah.
and it helps people, but it's not getting to what really the problem would be. So there you go.
So there you go.
Yeah. So getting the protein, and I have these conversations with patients all the time. B vitamins, super important on that end as well too. So giving them a boost in the morning, because if they have that low stomach acid, they're not getting the micronutrients for that. So those are another big thing that I really like to work with those people that typically are going to fall into the low testosterone, the low motivation, low dopamine issue there, all those types of things. So those are some simple things, and B3 actually is a very useful tool. So niacin, vitamin B3, because it can help make more of like tryptophan to help you stay calmer and more stress resilient. People call serotonin the happy neurotransmitter. It's really more about making you more stress resilient, so you don't react to your environment.
Right.
So when you don't react to your environment, you can stay calmer in a lot of situations, and you can deal with things a lot easier. And so then you're like, I don't feel like I need to go then run to have a cigarette or run to do this or run to do that, some bad behavior, eat when I shouldn't, things like that. So those are some things that we often will use with patients in that type of stereotype, if you want to call it, phenotype there. So and those are the basics of that. We get into like aromatase inhibitors, or something called chrysin that we'll use with patients. It's another herb that we'll use, and that's an aromatase inhibitor, a natural one. It comes in some formulas that we use at the clinic. We blast them with a whole bunch of glutamine there because that's super important for gut health and muscle repair. So people can take as much as, I've had patients on 40 to 60 grams of glutamine for a month to help them feel better and still, help with the gut and then rebuild tissue and muscle that they've lost. Because you can actually, if you get enough amino acids and protein in your diet, you will just build muscle and drop fat just from that, regardless of doing anything else at that point in time. Yes, you hit a plateau where you then you should be doing
Create
some
the stress.
Yes, yes. So then progressive overload. But but at some point in time, yes, you need to be able to move.
But when you're dealing with people that you described earlier,
yes,
belly over belt,
yep,
right?
There,
He-Man boobs, all the things, that ogre look, right?
Yep. And guys don't want to admit they have a problem, until they have a heart attack or the wife's like, I really want you to go see somebody. They're like, oh, finally, okay. And they're just run down. They're not getting out of bed. Everyone's like worried about them, right? And so then they come in, and it's much easier if you have a plan before then to tackle this issue before you get to where you're at. But everybody with the right motivation and the right plan can do a whole bunch of things and turn around in a year. You can look like a completely different person in a year. It's like
and feel like a different person.
Have a lot of energy.
Yes.
And it'll seem like it was,
and be setting the example for your children.
Yes.
And have a better sex life. And
yes.
Have,
right.
And
a more fulfilled, purposeful life, right?
100%.
I mean, that's when you take the risks in life. Be like, I think I'm going to try a different job. I'm going to go search for something new. I'm going to do a new career, whatever it is at that point in time. When you're on the other end of it, you're like, I'm just going to slug myself to the same crappy job or same life that I have, and I'm just going to do that.
I mean, I think I already know the answer to this question, but just to kind of validate my own, observational analysis on this, do you find that, women are much easier to be open to this help and suggestion and things like that?
Yeah.
I mean, this is why this program has been weighing so heavily on my heart as a gym owner, right? Because we see this day after day after day. You know who trains? Women.
Right.
You know who doesn't train? Men who think they have it figured out.
Yes.
Right? They don't know how to ask for help. And the whole point of this Carry Your Cross program is to see that strong men need strong men.
100%.
The next podcast that I'm watching, episode 4 tonight, is about how iron sharpens iron, and it's with a guy who we just laugh because under normal circumstances we would not like each other. You know what I mean? Like, we're so similar. And the things we don't like are the things we see of ourselves that we don't like in the other person. But it's like, but we love each other in Christ. We love each other as brothers, and we respect where each other comes from, and we have enough humility to know that this guy has something I don't have. I mean, and why wouldn't he? Like, we don't all have the answers here. We need you. We need me. We need Tim. We need these guys to support and be able to lift each other up so we can be that collective strong men that our society needs so bad right now.
I mean, that's why it's the disappearing male, right? Whether it's some plan, but you got to fight the plan that isn't, that we're going to have a big issue with, and we already are at this point in time. If you don't have strong men, you don't have strong fathers, you're going to have single family homes and all these things, and you can see it in communities now that if you have a whole bunch of single family homes, those kids don't do very well a lot of times. You have the few that do.
Rare exceptions.
Yes, but
they're exceptions.
Yes,
they're exceptions.
Yes.
Yeah. So I know you've heard this, but if you haven't heard this, it's this is the cycle, right? It's strong men make good times. Good times make weak men. Weak men make hard times. Hard times make strong men. Right? And what we're in, obviously, in Western culture, is we're in good times, and the weak man is obvious. But the problem is if we don't course correct, then the hard times are coming. They're inevitable.
And whether that thins the herd or whatever you want to say,
right.
Course correct, right?
It will.
And the people that are
the first rule of the zombie apocalypse is good cardio.
Right?
Yes.
Stay in shape. Don't be faster than the guy, stronger than the guy. Do whatever it is. Yes. So
Okay.
I think that that's been on my mind for a while. And obviously as you get older, you see it more and more, and the people that you hang around with, like, and my patients, I get to see the older patients who take care of themselves, like they're thriving in life, and the ones that don't have any kind of exercise routine, or they did and then they stopped, and all of a sudden it goes downhill super quick. And
so what you're talking about, if is the real underlying cause, is what is your purpose and meaning?
Yeah, 100%.
What are you, why are you getting up and praying, and why are you meditating and fasting and delaying your gratification and putting yourself in a position to give everything that you are to everyone else around you? And it's like, well, what's the alternative? Is to feel sorry for yourself and give up and
be the victim
and be the wimp, be a submitter to your basic whims and your basic impulses and your immediate gratification on a regular basis. And then if you're not going to make the sacrifices necessary to, willingly struggle in a purposeful and meaningful way, well, then you become the sacrifice, right? You become the guy who's gained 5 pounds over 20 years and is now the sacrifice you never made along the way. And so at our core, this all does come back to spiritual, dimension, right?
100%,
It all comes back to your relationship with life, why you're here, what roles you're serving, right? I just listened to a Jimmy Vivano speech, right?
Oh, yeah.
It wasn't the SB one.
Yeah.
It was one that he gave a couple weeks before he died. And, just another way of saying the same thing. He's like, people ask me, like, how do I manage this, and this? And he's like, how do I manage? He's like, I manage one thing. I manage one person. James Thomas William Bolvano.
Right.
And it is a full-time job
Yes.
to get up and meaningfully put yourself in the world in a way where you are living in a manner that matters.
Yes.
And it's like, that's what we're missing, people.
Oh, yeah.
We're missing what matters.
Yeah.
And if you can reestablish that, then you have your why as to why we need to make dietary changes.
Yes.
Why testosterone matters. Why working out matters. Why, And so, anyway.
Yeah, though, what is that, Simon Sinek, the why?
Yeah, what's your why?
What's your why?
What's your why? If you don't have it, well, you better find it.
Yeah. So read the book, figure out what you feel your place on this earth is for at this point in time.
Yeah.
And as you make changes, that will change, because your motivation to do other things and your willingness to do other things is going to change.
It's for something higher.
Yeah,
it's for something
it is.
Outside yourself.
Yeah.
It's for something bigger than you.
Yeah.
Find your motivation there. You want to know where anxiety and depression comes from? It also comes from making everything about you.
Yes. Right? Yeah.
It's like,
what are you going to bring to this world to make it a better place? So that's what you should be. You can either you can suck resources from it, or you can be somebody who gives to it and helps and fosters people and things and causes that are near and dear to your heart, that help as much of humanity.
Good.
Yeah. Yep. So
even at the expense of yourself.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. And that's the true gift, right?
Yes.
Is that without any kind of thinking that I'm going to get something back or any, it's just
the
straight
joy
sacrifice.
is watching God work through your gift, and then watching that improve this person's life and purpose and meaning, and have, like you said, that one person ripple out and help their marriage.
Yes.
And be a better example for your children.
Yep.
And blah 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 blah.
Yeah. Any of the other doctors that I've had in our office, I always make sure that they understand that the words they speak to it may have a greater impact than you will ever know, or they will ever tell you. So make sure that when you're talking to them, you're giving them hope, you're giving them some meaning. Yes. You're not just like, oh well, I don't know if we're going to be able to do this, or those types of things.
Just telling them to do this.
Yes.
Right. Give them the why.
Yes.
Explain it.
100%. Yes. So there's the things that that when patients come back and like, you told me one thing and I did it and it helped like immensely. I'm like, and it was the smallest, dumbest little thing that I could have probably told them, and they highly enjoyed it, and it was great. So yeah, it was definitely funny. So yeah, I never look that impact. Never take that for granted. That's for sure. So yeah, it's very cool.
And now you know why he's my primary physician. Oh man, it's fun to geek out with you.
It is
this stuff, dude. We'll wrap it up there. Phenomenal stuff. Obviously, men, if this is resonating with you or resonating with you in a way that people you know and love are suffering from this, you got your resource.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Right? All kinds of amazing people in this world and people local that have this incredible gift of knowledge and understand in such a profound way how the body works.
Yeah.
Just another tool and another great man who can help sharpen our iron.
Mm-hmm.
And thanks, Brian.
Yeah, thank you, man. Yeah, it was fun. Yeah.
Thanks, baby.
Yeah, thanks,
All
man.
right. All right.